And my topic here is the challenge of inclusive growth, global capitalization, institutional cost transferring, and economics of being poor. And I suppose that people all know 2080, that is kind of golden percentage in the world by globalization. 20 rich, 80 poor. And then nowadays it's enlarged. Maybe 90 poor, 10 rich. Or maybe 1% rich, 99% poor. So globalization enlarged the gap between rich and poor. There must be some regulation. So let's try to summarize the experience. After the Second World War, I think the people now need to renew your concept or redefine the concept. What happened after the Second World War? That is a kind of twin-head imperialist geopolitical recontrol by transferring industrial capital to their geo-controlling area. So we have a two kind of swallow transfer. One is US transfer to West Europe and to Japan. Another is a Soviet Union transfer their industrial to China and to East Europe. US succeeded in transferring and controlling West and Japan. USSR, Soviet Union, failed by China bloc because China wants to maintain the sovereignty. China is the biggest indigenous population country in the world. Never been totally colonized. So China blocked such kind of transferring, not China blocked, and the Soviet Union stopped also. So from 1957 stopped because Soviet Union want to control North China as Manchu originally. They control Mongolia and then also want to control Manchu. But it's originally in the beginning of 19th century, it's a fighting between Russia and Japan. These are two imperialist countries. They fight in China. Now when China gained the fully independence, they want them go out. So that's caused by fighting for the whole of the sovereignty, independence. You may know that China has been beat up by these imperialist countries 100 years. That is so-called not passion, it's a kind of philosophy. It's a kind of national feelings. So they don't want to be controlled by any Western countries. So that is why from 1950s, Soviet Union failed in controlling China. And then that is sometimes you may know that is some people will complain, caused by China, finally collapse. But it's different sides, they have different reason or different thinking. So that is and then by such kind of success, Anglo-American control this two-wing geopolitics. They win. And then turn to another mechanism that is transferring the cost, especially the institutional cost of modernization, of industrialization and urbanization to marginalized population. But in China, the same. So when we talk about internal third world, that is rural China. So just now I gave a finger to Hopei. He asked me, can you calculate how much the transferring cost to the marginalized population? I said, we have a study group. We have a calculate. During this 60 years modern Chinese history, 17.3 trillion the urban capital taken from rural China, including of land, including of labor, including of anything, and the price setters also. So by such kind of exploitation, now China urban capital became the large in the world. Larger, not largest, but larger in the world. So it's industrial capital. So if you calculate the physical production in China, it's a top one in the world. It's because they have a kind of internal exploitation, internal taking. So by such total number, we just calculate just from the countryside, contribute to the urban but it's inside of this political state. Because China set up a kind of political state 3,000 years ago. So that's inside. So we have an internalized mechanism to internalize the externalities by a country itself. Because it's a continental country, it's the biggest population, so we can stand. But if small country, no. So that is very different. So if you want to understand Chinese, what is experience, you may know that they do have exploitation, but it's inside. First. Okay, now we have a new challenge. Means that the more modernization, the more institutional cost. Like Europe. Europe modernized their economic structure, like US, like even India. You may know that the higher advantage GDP structure, like United States, 85% of GDP come from the third industry, from service, including a financial bubble. Okay. But anyway, 85. Manufacturing industry, only 12%. Agriculture, 2%. So most advantaged economic is more modernized economy, make more big gap between rich and the poor. Means modernization cannot solve the problem of poverty. Nowadays, 20% of American people have no food. And Hong Kong. Here we are in Hong Kong. 8% come from service industry, from the third sector, and also including of real estate and financials. And Hong Kong, the gap between rich and the poor also is large. And then if you go to India, 54% from third industry, from service. And then India, 1/3 of population poor. That means the more modernization, the more poor. So this is new challenge. A lot of people believe modernization. Few people calculate what is modernization cost. And also think about modernized political regime. We all believe that there is the advantage democratic political system. But also the more modernized political system, the high cost. That is now block the EU to solve the problem of their financial crisis. I don't want to say good or not. I don't want to say good or bad. It's a kind of volume. It's ideology. I'm just telling the truth, telling the reality, and then you do your own thing. Here is the curve, shows that caused by the crisis from here, from 2008 to 2011. These are 4 years. Caused by the crisis happened in 2008. That is poor in China, now down to 6%. And the poor in United States increased to 19%. So it doesn't mean which one is better, which is worse. It means it's just a reality, just a truth. And then you can see that what is an abnormal crisis. The modern political debts, the modern political regime make more debts. Originally, that when we talk about the third world, the South, we suffer about high debts in 1980s, 1990s. But nowadays, it's a new century, 70% of debts created by advantaged country, and half in United States. And how United States can maintain their position by military expense. So the more debts, more expense in military expense. To protect what? Bubble economy. Now half of the bubble financial economy in United States. So half. One is half of government debts, and then half of military expense, and then half of bubble. These are 3 halves together, you can understand what is the background of Western or advanced countries' crisis. So what is imperialism? What is fascism? If you have a kind of power of polarization, turning to fascism is just regular. So nowadays, when we talk about the South countries, what is the other side? What happened in the other side? So you don't need to use very old concept to understand new phenomena. We need to reset up our concept, redefine our concept, and then we can understand what is the world, what is the change. Now this one is the deaths. Top 10 is the top 10 countries of deaths. And then there's a EU legislation crisis because they all break right line. So EU now is illegal. Euro is also illegal. So they need to reunify, revise the constitution of EU. So if they all can pass, they may save the problem. But if they can't, okay, that is a so-called break law. So it's a illegal organization now, and the illegal money. So but I think that it's not good for European countries, but it's very popular phenomenon now. Here is why advantaged countries have a so heavy political regime burden and the political regime cost. It's because of here. You can see that here is 2005, and the labor population decreased since 2005. And then the labor population need to pay more for social security. And then the social expense of the government's expense became more larger than 50%. If it go beyond 50%, means that debts increased. So here is advantaged country, it's a developed country. The non-labor to labor is increased also from 2010 increased. So it means that the political system in Western countries cannot solve its internal problem like this one. It's the curve, but it's tendency. Can you use your modern political superstructure to solve this problem? No way. So it's hopeless. And then we can see that if you want to maintain advantaged countries' superstructure, you need to pay big money for solve the problem. And so we need to have we need to renew our theoretical framework by the creative. So we are trying to set up a kind of transdisciplinary studies. It means that we want to set up critical policy studies, and that is a new multidisciplinary studies. We want to start it from different countries' primitive accumulation of their industrialization. What is the Asian countries' primitive accumulation, their industrialization, and then it's created the institution. So the institution come from the industrialization, and then they have a past dependence. Yes, and then what is the poor? Poor caused by transferring the cost to the marginalized population. So it's not only in China or in Asian countries or in other, but it's in the world. The whole world is the same. I think it's a kind of very universal applied theory. So that is a way we communicate with these very good thinker like Samuel Min here and Immanuel Wallenstein. And let's give the summary of our studies. We found that the advanced country lead 3 times transferring cost to the developed country, to the south. Here you can see that the first is by colonization, by killing, by massacre, and then they win. But finally, it's the Second World War. It's the First World War and Second World War, killed, massacred a lot of people, and then they're pulling south into trap by Western-centric geostrategy. That is the history. But it's the first time big transferring cost to the South. And second time, post of the Second World War. So there is a second transferring, means that they have a swallow two wings, transfer the industry to developing countries. Now, the class struggle in developing countries. But in Western countries, they have a middle class because they don't need to produce. They need to consume, and then consume from developing countries. So the industry transfer out, the class struggle also transfer out. That is a so-called advantage. And then the third is also, anyway, it's nowadays the financial bubble transferring. It means that if you have a lot of paper currency printed out, issued out, and then government treasury bonds issued out, means that you made inflation. Where is the inflation turned to? Turned to emerging countries. Because you need to import a lot of raw materials and even import a lot of food. But the inflation mainly in food market and the raw material market and the energy market. So the more inflation made by Western countries, the more cost taken by developing countries. So nowadays is the third time transferring cost to South. Now, the problem is that South still be in the trap of ideological issues. But this ideology is exactly created by advanced country, not by yourself, not by South. But South now in such kind of ideological trap. So we need to change. And the second part, we are trying to summarize the experience of development. You know, development means that developmentalism. Developmentalism also means the trap of modernization. Up to now, you cannot find any successful model in developing country if you do believe developmentalism, if you targeted modernization, if you set up a modern superstructure, copy the system from Western countries, you must fail. Give you an example. We all know that the labor price nominally in India just 60% of mainland China. But why there's no large amount of FDI flow to India? The labor price is cheap in India, much cheaper than China. Why is FDI now flow into China? You see what? Caused by the superstructure. I don't want to give more explanation because it's not good. We also want to change our own political system. But few people understand. If China finish land revolution by distribute land to every rural household, means what? Means that the rural people, they owe a small land owner. They are petit bourgeois, or petit bourgeoisie. Petit bourgeois means that they do have some profits. It means that the land is a zero risk properties held by rural people. So they can send their family members for short-term cash income, for maintain their family life, so maintain the family survival. They are original peasants. They don't need 8 hours working day. Because in the countryside, in village, they work from early morning until deep night for their family. So they don't need you give them 8 hours per day. And also they don't need weekend. Because in rural, in countryside, they don't have weekend. So it's modern system in urban, but it's traditional system in countryside. So the countryside people can stand no social security. Means that the labor cost, institutional cost of labor, advantage is not good. But it's just because now we all in the Western-centric discourse. So I need to say something, make you understand. Anyway, it's tradition, China. to play important role for the competition, not modern China. So when you were in coastal area, you only see these very modern cities, and then you think, okay, that is capitalism. But no people going deep into the countryside to know the details in countryside. Okay. So, caused by this mainstream discourse, people believe that the more agriculture, the more poor, and then the government's authority, no matter whatever ism you believe, you need to set up pro-capital policy to absorb FDI, all private investments, and then for your development. That is very popular. No matter who, even you, to be the mayor or to be the president or the premier, anyway, if you stop, and then immediately you kick out. Whatever ism, that is another thing. But one thing is truth. If you think that you're in agriculture and your people is poor, you need to set up industry. You need first to pass the primitive accumulation of industrial capital. Where is capital come from? If from outside, you are debts. You need to pay back debts. And then the investors want you to change your institution, because not apply to these investors. That is originally South countries suffer, because your culture, your characteristics, not apply these Western institutions. But you have to change, and then you have a conflict. So that is not, the problem in developing countries is the problem, but not the problem of developing countries. It's caused by Western countries. Look at this, just now you showed the Dujiangyan. I said this 2,500 years ago. It's historical heritage taken by modern China. Now every authority, no matter dynasties or party leaders, all need to protect, to make this thousands of years, and then now irrigate the agricultural area. So that is history. And this one is Egypt. It's in very traditional Egyptian tomb. We found that this agricultural society, they have the similar phenomena like Asia, like China, like India. If you go to find the things are similar, and the people the same face, you can see that different, no difference, and no big muscle and no big hands. Everything is same. So it's a kind of group culture, group-based culture, not individual-based culture, and not Western culture. So agricultural society is similar. It's their livelihoods. So by such kind of summarize, we can find that most larger indigenous and tribe population countries cannot jump into Western model industrialization and urbanization, but Oriental small households living in village community. So the common wealth and the common properties belong to community, society. So if you break the communal society, you will have no common wealth and common properties. So when you visit Zhouzhuang village or you visit the Huaxi village, you may find that they still have a public ownership. It's not owned by public, by villagers themselves. So it's a commune ownership. It's a collective. Means that they also exclude others. They only control these properties no matter how big. Like Huaxi, annually net income 5 billion. It's big money, but belong to village, not belong to any outside village. So that is a community ownership. They control these properties. So when we talk about these things, we will question, is there any successful model of agricultural modernization among advantaged countries, among Western countries? No. But huge subsidies and the geopolitical control. You may say that American agriculture is successful. You ask American farmers, they say no. You ask Australian farmers, is a successful model? They said no. If you go to Europe, European farmers tell you no, certainly not. And then look at this one. Is there any successful model of urbanization in developing country? If you go to slum, the local people will tell you no, we are poor, even that we are citizens, but we cannot enjoy any city life. Yes? So if you set up slum for accelerate the urbanization, it's not a successful model, no matter how percentage you have. So fortunately or unfortunately, China now accelerate urbanization with no big slum. Small one maybe, but not big. We don't have big slum. Nowadays maybe 46% of urbanization. I mean, population living in urban area, 46%. Up to now, no big slum. So slow down, I think it's more better. Here, let me give you a reflection of China. What is China? You said socialist country, Communist Party, whatever. It's all ideology made by West-centric philosophy, not from our traditional culture. What is China? After land revolution, China is the largest petty bourgeois country. 88% of the rural people out of modernization, it means delinking. You may know that somewhere I mean talking about linking and delinking. When we finish our land revolution, means that 90% of Chinese people out of the urban capital, they are delinking. Because of delinking, China solved the problem of high inflation. When 1920s, 1930s, China joined the competition of the world modernization, China immediately fell in the trap of high inflation and ruining out the countryside, and conflicts turned to revolution. After revolution, equal district land means that they regain their traditional society. People live in community. They help each other, and then they have a common wealth and common properties. So they go back tradition, and then they out of the crisis. That is 1949. From 1950, change by industrialization. And then half-century industrialization, we have a biggest middle-class population now in China. When you visit Hangzhou, why I want you to go there? Because Hangzhou, middle class, over 50% of the population. The government need to change the governance to apply middle class. And Hangzhou is a typical middle class city. You'd better to be there to know what is middle class. And then they also have a working class, like I mentioned, Mr. Xu Rencai. He is a leader of a grassroots network that is migrant network. So we will have some big change. And after well, I think that maybe within 5 or 10 years, we will have a working class and capitalist class. Capitalist class and working class, they will have a conflict. It's a kind of contradiction leading the society change. So nowadays, we said China is a kind of very typical triangle society. The upper one, less than 5%. They mean it's a big rich. Less than 5% is rich. And the middle class, 25%. And another 70% still petty bourgeoisie. Means small property holders and something. So it's a stabilized as a kind of pyramid. Yes? So if China turns this pyramid into the working class and the poor people to be larger, the large number is the poor people and the working class, that will be upside down. So that is why Chinese always consider about stability. We must maintain the stability because up to now it's the biggest population country, cannot upside down. Here, look at the population. By the crisis. This one is a crisis in 1930s. From 1934, caused by the 29 to 33 worldwide crisis, China very much impacted by such kind of world crisis. So 1934 is a silver flow out, deflation happened in China, very much harmed the private capitalism, nationalist capitalism. So falling into the crisis, so these are poor people in 1930s. Now it's 2008, caused by the the world crisis, many people lost jobs. You may not know that 25 million workers laid off. I ask you, any country can stand 25 million workers laid off? Oh no, 25 million. It's a big number. If it happened in your country, what you follow? Chaos. But in China, what happened? You haven't seen that it's silent. Like I mentioned, that we have a lot of people sit at corner, they keep quiet. Why Chinese silent? Because during these years, from 1999, Chinese policy think tank understand we are now in the overproduction. Similar the problem as Western countries in 1930s. Now we need to solve the problem. So from 1999, started to use the government's hands for bonds investments. 10 years passed. Chinese governments invested into the infrastructure construction in countryside, in Western China and Mid China and Northeast China, 10 trillion. 10 trillion means $1.5 trillion of dollars. Think about America. When they have the problem, they give big money to financial sector. When Chinese facing the challenge of the crisis, Chinese invest into the physical production. So that is different. So if you want to know the difference, certainly when you give a large amount of money investing in the physical production, you need to occupy more land, natural resources, and then more pollution. But finally, you make people to have a job, and then they can have an income, their family survival by such kind of big crisis over the world. So that is different. We understand we do have a big problem. Severe pollution. Increase fast. But you give me another way. Can we find other way out? No pollution, but still can make these 25 million laid-off workers to have a cash income, and then their family can keep life. That is a big challenge. So compare with these two sides, two pictures. You can see that what is the difference. All caused by world crisis, not domestic, world crisis. That is 1930s. Created fightings and conflicts and revolutions. You know that Chinese Red Army in 1930s and the guerrilla movement in 1930s and so on and so. Many things happened in that time. This time, conflicts, yeah, but not turn to the guerrilla movements. It's a big population country, so many contradictions. Here is a so-called primitive accumulation in old China. That's one, in old China, by landlord. That is also exploitation. But here, in Mao's China, by collective system, people concentrate their labor, investing into the construction with little pay. They exploit themselves for primitive accumulation of state industrialization. That's different. Old China, you exploited by landlord, or out of village landlord. But New China, you believe that whole people's ownership, you exploit it yourself. You contribute whatever is surplus to state, and then you finish primitive accumulation for your industrialization. Now China became the biggest industrial country, caused by China exploited this billion people by themselves. So we do have exploitation. Now here is inflation. That's one you may not know what this number. The number is 6 billion. 1 bill, 6 billion. And then here, down here, there's a equal 10,000. 6 billion equal 10,000. Means that in 1948, Chinese old governments facing the challenge of financial crisis, they need to deal with this big decrement of the currency, and then fall into the trap, collapse. So when we talk about the dual system between rural and urban, you may know that from the urban society, they contribute two kinds of surplus to the state industrial capital. That is a primitive capital accumulation for state industrialization. So one is that the sizers, price sizers, The governments take large surplus from agriculture. Here is also the labor surplus. So we said when Russians stop investment, China use the labor replace capital. That is a China. Now reform. That's forgave that. Finally, let me give the conclusion of Chinese experience. That is a government's cooperation for the development. That is a so-called Chinese real experience. The government's not governments. Government's government's cooperation. So, by such kind of institution, followed reform is past dependence. Now, when you talk about totalitarian system, let me tell you, no. Here is there's a dark curve. It's a central budget. This one is local. When 1957, Soviet Union stopped investment, central down from 80% down to 20%. So there's no centralization, no central power since 1957. 60s, 70s, until 80s, all localization. Until 1994, changed to half-half. So up to now, local do have some power for do whatever for themselves. Now there's also the physical capacity. If you want to do rural construction or rural reconstruction, you need investment. Investment from not markets, from the governments. Here, finally, you can compare China with other countries. A continental China, every province similar as a kind of country. So you can find a lot of countries yourself in Chinese provinces. So when you talk about China, I suppose that forget it's a one country compare. You compare with different provinces. So here, Turkey here, okay. If you go to Beijing, it's like Slovakia. If you go to Shanghai, it's Saudi Arabia. Yes. If you go to Fujian province, it's Cuba. So you can compare China different provinces with, but it's not made by my staff, it's by British. So it means that if you want to know China, you need to, as I mentioned, you need to have an attitude of learning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Wen Tiejun, for this extremely inspiring macro view of the China experience in modernization and everything development.